what's it is. Something, well, it could be an old tool or an old gadget or device of some sort, and let people kind of guess what it is. Uh, Tonight I have an audible what's it, and I got it all set up here. This is it's one of Tommy Dorsey's greatest hits. The reason I brought it is because it kind of ties in with what I'm going to talk about. Let's see, where's the play here? I got actually this. It's off from an 8-track tape, and I have thousands of records and tapes, and I've never seen this song before as a title on any of those records or tapes. So also the original was 3 minutes long, and I won't bore you with the first 2 minutes. This is the last minute, which has the melody. Okay, whoever can guess that song gets a 3 years membership in the Historical Society. Oops. No, that's got nothing to do with milk bottles. In fact, I'll tell you, the milk bottle is in the title, for starters. No guesses? No? Okay, the title of it is Parade of the Milk Bottle Caps. And if that's one of Jimmy Dorsey's greatest hits, it may be why he never was as popular as Tommy. I forgot 2 of my props here. Okay, before we get into the local milk bottles here, maybe a history of milk bottles would be a good idea. As cities grew, even in New York City in the beginning, there were farms right there on Manhattan Island, and it was no problem for people to go to the farm and get their milk. But as the city swallowed up the farmland, why it became necessary for the farmer, if he wanted to sell milk to the home folks, why he needed bottles. And the first milk bottles were nothing more than fruit jars, similar to this. And the problem with them was that they couldn't come up with a cover for them. They tried all kinds of clamp-ons and various types. The idea was if the bottle got out away from you and it came back with a with no top on it, why, then you were stuck. You had to either buy a new outfit or steal a cap off another bottle. They had all kinds of gadgets. This is not a milk bottle, but it gives you some idea of the gadgets that they came up to seal the bottle. This was kind of like a lightning fastener. I can't push that in there because the rubber's all hardened up, but bent over like that, and then this come up and locked it on there. And there were bottles similar to that. And it wasn't until 1884 that a fellow by the name of Dr. Thatcher up in Potsdam, New York, invented the bottle as we know it today. And his idea was that inside of the top rim here was a ledge, which you could put a cap into it. And of course, the first ones were probably handmade, and they couldn't make them very economically. And along about just before 1900, a fellow by the name of Robert Owens out in, I believe he was out in Illinois, invented a bottle making machine which this is about a 1900 bottle making machine, and what a monstrosity. This is a chair down there where the operator could rest his feet or whatever, and I don't know how many arms are on there, but each one of these would make a bottle. It says it can make 50,000 a day, which I don't know. It's I figured it out, and that's one bottle every 1 2/3 seconds, assuming that the thing operated 24 hours a day. So I don't know. It's a little bit hard to believe, but I talked to Jim Brucey, and of course he had no idea how that thing worked, because the newer ones is different. But is different from that is probably one of those old adding machines that you did this, you know, with your hand calculator. Entirely different. But he said it's entirely possible, because the new ones, of course, do crank them out probably one every half second. And let's see, in around the 1920s, Owens had bought up all of the bottle patents, the designs of bottles, and one of them was a milk bottle, and they assigned exclusive rights to Thatcher Manufacturing Company to make milk bottles as long as they made 750,000 gross per year. I do the arithmetic on that. That's 108 million bottles, milk bottles per year, which seems like a lot, but I was looking on the internet, and today the container industry, which would include paper cartons and plastic jugs, they produce, well, for year 2000, they produced 310 million per day. So, of course, unless they have recycling, that's all thrown away, but that's what people want, is convenience, fast, throw it away. Now, where did I get the bottles, you may ask? Back in the early 60s, bottle digging was a big craze, and everybody was out in the woods and dumps and digging bottles. Well, I thought that it would be a good idea to dig the old bottle dumps up on Logan Hill. And why these bottles got dumped is because for some reason people will set out a milk bottle whether it belongs to the local dairy or not. Somebody comes to visit and they might bring a bottle from New York City or wherever, and eventually they would set them out and the local milk dealer would pick them up, and when he found out they weren't his, he'd chuck them into a barrel. Eventually the barrel would get full and he'd take them up on top of Logan Hill and dump them out. And fortunately some of them survived. Also, I was happened to be in the right place at the right time when Warlock Shaver was cleaning out the old barn next to his operation there on Water Street. And in the barn were these things here, the old crates. You got one of Maxwell and Highview, and these old carrying things which the root man or lady, I gotta include ladies, because my wife delivered milk. And she claims she learned how to drive on the milk boat. So anyway, I got these and this and probably that. This here wound up being used as a bait box. These, by the way, in case nobody knows what they are, they're in the winter time when the milk was left onto the back porch for too long, and it would freeze, and the cream would up out of the bottle, and the neighborhood cats would come around and lick the cream off. And so they solved the problem a little bit by setting the milk into these boxes. And this one is this one here, I don't know. Maybe Joe Scharf made that. I don't know. This is a factory-made one here, which Loose Dairy had, and I believe Leo at one time worked for Loose Dairy many years ago. So that's a little bit of the history of bottles, milk bottles. So we'll get into the ones of Candor bottles that had the owner's name on. This is a very precious bottle, and we have Mary Dents to thank for loaning it to us tonight. There's only two of these that I know about. One Mary has, and when they sold out Kelsey's Worldly Goods at a tag sale, there was one of these in the cellar. And I thought I was being smart by getting one of the first tickets to get into the house when down cellar was the good stuff, the Kelsey milk bottle. And I think somebody in Owego bought it. So, who was Marion Kelsey? Well, anybody that's lived around there long enough knows who Kelsey was. I agonized over what can I say about Marion Kelsey that hasn't been said 100 times. And I guess the old rule is if you can't say something nice about somebody, don't say anything. Well, I thought and thought, and then I finally came up with something nice I could say about him. So he was born in 1893, the son of John Woodbridge and Jerusha Kelsey. He had an older brother, Howard, about 2 years older than, I'm going to call him Cad, so when I say Marion, you won't think I'm talking about my wife. Cad Kelsey had an older brother, Howard. He was about 2 years older, and a sister, Genevieve. She was about 2 years younger. And they lived in the house on the corner of Kelsey and Williams Road, where Billy and Becky Wakeman now live. And they fixed the place all up. Looks pretty nice. He lived there all his life. And he was, when he died? He died in 1985 at age 92, so spent his whole life there in that house. During all that time, he never had any running water. I think after the war, World War II, that he did buy a water pump, but when he found out how much it was going to cost him to have it installed, he left it right in the crate, and so all those years he got his water by throwing a bucket down in the dug well, which was right with the back door. In fact, you had to walk over the well, and then the house had a bunch of old rotten lumber over the top of it. It's a wonder somebody didn't fall in there. Anyway, that's the way he got his water. He'd throw the bucket in there and haul it back up with a rope for all those years. He attended school in the Hubbardtown School. That's the one on the corner of Howard Hill Road and Owego Road. It's been turned into a dwelling now. I don't know who lives there, but it was right on the corner. He went to Candor High School, graduated from Candor High School. On this paper over here, it says that he graduated in 1918 from Cornell. But I asked Gloria Agard to check on when he attended Cornell, and she said that he graduated in 1930 after taking a 4-year course in horticulture. So you take your pick. Was it 18 or 30 like the records show? His father, Woodbridge, was a stone cutter, and we have a nice example of his workmanship in our front yard. It's an old hitching post which I rescued from destruction when they were rebuilding the roads around well, it's this road right out here. When they were rebuilding that, this stone hitching post was in front of what was known as the Dr. Roper place, and that is the house next door to Lorena Wright. And the hitching post was out front. They were going to bulldoze it or whatever. So I went up to rescue it and got into more work than I figured. The hitching post itself is maybe this tall, sticks up above the ground, but the base of it is that big, weighs 500 pounds. Well, probably not that much, but weighs an awful lot. So nearest we can figure out, or at least Glenn Andrews said that he remembers the barn there on Cad's farm burned in the 1920. He had an old lantern which he was prone to tipping over, I guess. He took it up in the hay mound and it tipped over and set the hay on fire, burned the barn up. So I am at a loss to say whether or not he bottled milk before 1920, or this bottle does have what appears to be a date on the bottom of 25. That's just a guess as to whether it's a date or not, but if it was, then he probably operated or worked the farm on his grandfather's side of the boundary, which is where the old pillared house was. And any of you are not familiar with that house, if you are ever going up Route 88 to Albany, as you approach Sydney, if you look up on the side hill, you can see the old Kelsey house sitting up there. Ed Winnick, Cantor boy, who became a veterinarian and lived in Sydney, bought the old house and had it taken down piece by piece, numbered, and took it back to Sydney and put it up on the side hill there, and it looks pretty nice. Cad raised potatoes and beautiful flowers. We have many slides of his flower garden with all kinds of beautiful flowers and gladiolus. He used to take loads of, had an old Ford with a rumble seat, and they would fill that rumble seat right full of bouquets of glads and take them up to Cornell and sell them. Pretty good money back in those days, because I don't know what he got for a bunch of them, but they could load up 70, 80 bouquets of glads in that old rumble seat, and they sold them for $1 a piece. That was real good money back in 25 cents. Well, okay, it's still a lot of money for those days. Yeah.
You just said something nice about it.
I haven't got to that yet. He was a tough old bird. He had a couple of close calls. I don't know what relation Charlie Bedell is to him, but he used to kind of look after him in his declining days. He went over there one day and found him down in that well. The rope had broken on the loose from the bucket, and he'd climbed down in there to rescue the bucket. And of course he got his feet wet, and then the rocks were slippery and he couldn't climb back out. So Charlie found him down in the well. And then another time, somebody who was going to work saw an arm waving up over a snowbank, and he'd gone out with a shotgun. He'd heard a noise outside. He went out with a shotgun and fallen down. He couldn't get back up. And if the people hadn't seen that arm over the snowbank, nobody knows what happened to him. Okay, now we come to the nice thing is that it's really a moot point, but he donated a lot of shrubbery and trees and stuff to the school. They were planted out in front of the entryway into the old part of the school. Eventually they closed that up, and I think that's when they donated these plants. I thought there was a plaque there, but I discovered that they're all gone now, so if there was a plaque, it probably went with them. So, that's so much for Mr. Kelsey. Now, next is Floyd Doty. I have a Floyd Doty pint quart in a pint bottle. He was born 1881, died 1962, age 81. He bought the farm on Water Street where Sonny and Del Winnick live now, number 10 Water Street, and bought it from somebody with the name of Kuykendall, and he started the dairy business at that location in 1920. I had in my head that they lived up the Spitzer Road where Art Kellogg lived recently, crossing the Ball Diamond. And I just couldn't get the idea out of my head. And after I learned that he'd been there on Water Street from 1920 to 1936, or 1937, when he sold the farm to Leo Maxwell, he went up on the Spencer Road and bought that Kellogg place. I guess Will Payne owned the farm at the time, and he probably bought it from him. That's when I realized that I was a kid when I was 11 or 12 years old. As I say, I remember being up there, and the Dotys were there, but I remembered it as a kid, but I was a kid when I was 11 or 12 years old, so it made sense then. He was, in 1928, he was appointed a Justice of the Peace, and he held that office for many, many years. And after 1936 to at least 1950, he was a court crier in court in Owego. He's the guy who says, "Hear ye, all persons who have," I guess that's what they do, I don't know. He was a mayor in 1924 for 2 terms, member of the Methodist Church, Candor Grange, Alert Hose Company, and I guess when they sold the farm to probably Elmer Kellogg, they moved downtown and lived at the end of Bank Street. I'm not sure, maybe that's where Tom King lives now. If Tom King lives at the end of Bank Street, that's where Doty lived. The next one is Lawrence Storm, L.A. Storm. And that is another conundrum. I called Shirley Irvay, who was Lawrence and Alice Storm's oldest daughter. She said that she never remembered her father, Lawrence, selling milk, but she did remember her grandfather, Charles Storm, selling milk there. And the farm is where Wicklines live now. Used to be a barn out back, and the land which on Bank Street now has a bunch of houses on it was farmland, and they also had land up to Honey Pot. But yeah, right. And there's a milking shed up there, and they milked them right outdoors there in the milking shed. And let's see, Charles Storm bought that place in 1923 from a fellow by the name of Flummer Felt, and that was brought to my attention by Catherine Turk Truman, who said she remembers Mr. Flummerfelt delivering milk to them in their house, which is right across from the old bank building. Lawrence, as far as I know, he always drove truck. He worked for Wardenman Skoy and drove the feed truck around, and occasionally I guess he would even drive for K.O. Ward when he needed extra trucker. He married Alice Powers, and they had, I don't know, six children maybe. Alice ran the beauty shop where the country lady is now for many years. I did run across an ad in the 1934 annual where Lawrence was advertising Shell gas, so apparently in 34 anyway he had a gas station somewhere. All I ever remember him doing was driving a truck. The next one is John Craig. His bottle says Pinehurst, Guernsey, John B. Craig, Gander, New York. And also a quart and a pint. And John Benjamin Craig, he was born in 1897, died in 1957 at the age of 60. He served in the Navy in World War I. Married Helen Wagoner. I believe she lived in Topeka, Kansas in 1927. He started selling insurance in 1926, according to his ad in the old Couriers. I'm not sure exactly when he bought the farm, but the farm is the one up on Spencer Road where Skip Williams lives now. And he bought the farm in 1931. I know he was there in 1931 because he leased his land to some oil company. He sold the farm to Howard Smith in 1936, and I believe he moved into the village in what the old timers know as the Marsh House. It's on Owego Street. I have no idea who lives there. The house is right next to the guy who used to have the limo service in a house where Chuck Gilch used to live. My remembrance of John Craig was that he came to the house selling insurance, and he smelled like a tea bag. strong smell of tea. Whether he drank a lot of tea, or I read somewhere that tea makes a good deodorant, so maybe he knew that way back then. That's the way I remember him when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. That he smelled like a tea bag, and or a cup of tea. He worked towards the end of his life. He worked for the State Department of Labor. He and Helen had one child, Margaret. She was married to Bud Manning and later to Gerald Bucky Turner. Next is Leo Maxwell, who I should know a lot about him because he was my father-in-law. Got three quart and a pint, and this one here held chocolate milk. And does anyone remember if there ever was a strawberry flavor? I think they sold them in the school cafeteria. It just seems to me there was a strawberry flavor, but definitely chocolate milk in that bottle. Leo Charles Maxwell. He was born 1891. He died in 1960 at age 69. He was born in the town of Caroline. He went to school in Prospect Valley. He attended Candor High School, and he attended the chiropractic school in Davenport, Iowa, before he got married in 1913. He married Grace Westfall December 25th, 1913. They lived in Candor for a few years, and I believe it was on what's now the Huizinga place. They moved from there to Ithaca, and he had a store out back of the house there. Not sure if it was North Cayuga or North Albany Street that they lived on, but had a sort of a dairy store out back of the house where he sold milk. He didn't have a farm, but he bought milk from area farmers, and he came up with the name of Lake View. So if we've got any bottle collectors out here and you come across a Lake View bottle, that's one that Leo named. From there he moved to Brooktondale. He bought a farm in Brooktondale, and that's where my wife Marion was born and raised, I guess. In 1937, he bought Floyd Doty's place on Water Street, and he was mayor from 1949 to 58, and he drove school bus, and for many years, member of Baptist Church, Grange, and various chiropractic organizations. He sold the business to Louis Stevens in 1946. Louis Stevens advertised in the annual in 1948. He called himself Stevens Guernsey Dairy, but I don't believe that he ever had his name on any bottles. He came up with the name of Highview, which is this painted bottle here. Eventually went to Square bottle, and I suppose because on that farm most of the land is up on the top of Logan Hill. Anyway, the land that you can farm without rolling downhill. And so when when Louis bought it, he built the new facilities, which are over there now. Sonny Winnick had his maple syrup distillery in there, and so he that was Louis' project or contribution to the business. And in 1952 he sold the business to Richard Snow from Brooktondale, I guess, or Caroline, somewhere. Richard Snow wasn't there only for, well, less than a year, and bad health overtook him and he had to sell it. And he sold it to Warlock Shaver in 1953. After he sold the farm, Louis and his wife Ruth bought the store from Louis Meyer, and that's would be the store, well, next to the what used to be the upper firehouse. He advertised in the annual as Stevens Cash Market. In 1959, he swapped with Marvin Birch. Marvin Birch lived up in the house on the corner of McCarty Street and whatever the across Ann Street. No, it wasn't on the. It's in the middle of the block. Marv Birch had that built, and he and his wife Florence lived there, and they just kind of swapped places, I guess. Marv turned the store into a plumbing shop, and Florence had a, I don't know, craft, was it? In clothing, yeah. Well, I got dry goods. I don't know. Kind of covers crafts, clothing, whatever. So, okay. Then next came Warlock Shaver. Warlock had been there before. He had worked the Gridley farm up the Spencer Road for, I don't know, a number of years, I guess. And he bought from Louis Stevens or Richard Snow in 1953. And it came from Trumansburg, so he was the one who apparently got into paper cartons because a bunch of us boys used to go to Canada fishing, and we were coming back from Canada one night actually, been fishing all day, and that's when they were building Route 81. And in places, Route 81 and 11 were the same thing. So you had to, if you went up Route 11, which you had to, more or less, you had to cross 81 at some point, and the road was really bad. I mean, it was really bumpy. Well, we were going along, and all of a sudden, here's a huge, and probably a 4x4 by 4 carton sitting right in the middle of the road. And we got out and see what it was, and turns out it was, it may have had Shaver's name on the outside somewhere, and the reason we connected it up with Shaver. And so we managed to load it up somehow, either put it in the boat, back of the boat, or Will Salmy, he was another one in the bunch, Ed Whitcomb, my dad, and even sometimes Howard's Snuffy Smith. So we loaded it up, brought it back to him, delivered it to him the next day, somebody did, and I guess he was quite happy to see it. I can't remember whether there was one or two, but there were paper cartons which he had been up to Messina and bought and was bringing home in his truck. Of course, Warlock was never one to waste any time, so he was probably doing pretty good on that bumpy road, and it tossed him out the back end. Also, in 1962 or thereabouts, he went out of business. And if anyone lived in the village then, you know what he went into: raising calves in pens outside. And the odor was something else. Anyway, Millard Dairy rented the cooler at the plant there to store milk in. Cliff Stevens was their salesman. I don't have any biographic stuff on Cliff, but he may have delivered for Shaver before Millard came along too. I don't remember that.
I think he delivered for Spencer Dairy. I don't think he delivered for
Spencer? Red Sicker? That's a possibility. I think that it was either Millard, and I think Millard was taken over by Lakeland Dairies of Dresden. Millard was from Dundee, and Lakeland was out of Dresden. Also, at that time, Crowley, Leon Holly, I believe was his name. I think he lived right across from the upper beer palace there in the old George Martin house. And he probably had a cooler out back because he delivered milk. There's a few different sizes of Crowley milk bottles. Another one who delivered in Candor, as you mentioned, was Frank Redsicker from Spencer, North Spencer Dairy. Johnny Robinson said that he thought that there was another dairy from Spencer that delivered here, but he couldn't remember the name. There were two other Spencer dairies. There was Catatunk Creek Dairy, which is across the street from where Bob Molyneux lives, kind of on the, well, it'd be across from Bob Molyneux's on the, I don't know what that road is called, but that was the Catatunk Creek Farm. There was also another one, Ray Sabin, and he lived, his farm was on the Sabin Road, kind of the back road from Spencer to Benetton. And I guess that about covers the Candor bottles. They do. How am I doing on time?
What's the odd-shaped bottle on the end there?
Oh, well, that is a patented bottle. It's Cop the Cream, and supposedly this is a head of a policeman here. I don't know. The idea, I guess, was the cream would collect in here and called it Cop the Cream, but it was a patented bottle. This pyroglazing, they call it, was an innovation which did away with the necessity of making molds that had the name in them. And if you hold this just right, you can make out the name of Furman Brothers of Ithaca, New York. This bottle from Cloverdale Dairy in Owego, New York, was, if you're a bottle collector, you know what the purple means. It means it was a World War I bottle, because during World War I, believe it or not, lead is an ingredient of glass. It's what makes it kind of sparkle, makes it clear when you put it into the mixture. Well, during World War I, they needed lead for the bullets, so they substituted manganese, and the manganese did the job of making it clear, but it also would turn purple when it was exposed to too much sunlight. So anytime you see a slightly purple bottle, it probably was from World War I time. That's the red sicker. Now, during this time, stores back in the 30s, 40s, after World War II, when refrigeration became available, stores began selling milk, or the dealers would sell milk through the stores, and they used these universal 5-cent bottles, where you paid a nickel for the bottle. If you took it back, well, you just swapped and didn't have to pay another nickel. But that comes in the 3 sizes, the quart and pint and half pint. Also, during this period, there were several other men, dairies, farmers, who sold milk, but they didn't have their name on the bottle. They just used a plain bottle, which you could buy from Sears and Roebuck or Montgomery Ward by mail order. And I've got some sheets over here of various ads out of the old catalogs. They were relatively cheap. You could buy a quart for 4 3/4 cents, I guess. The reason there was so many dairies, people selling milk in bottles at that time, if you sold it to a company, a milk company, you got about 2 cents a quart for it. But if you bought a bottle for a nickel, you could sell the milk for 10 cents a quart. And assuming that you got the bottle back, eventually it wouldn't cost you a whole lot for overhead, and you're getting 5 times the money for your milk over the farmers that sold to the milk companies. So it was a pretty good investment, and there were a bunch of them. There was Art Richards, lived up on the Ithaca Road. He bottled milk. Who else? Howard Scharf alerted me to the fact that Steve Hager sold milk, because he remembers bringing a bottle home. They lived there on Church Street, and Steve Hager lived in the house right next to where Mary Dent's does. I didn't know who lives there. I thought it was Bob Riggs, but I got told that's wrong. He never lived there. So anyway, whoever lives there next to Mary Dent's is where Steve Hager lived. He had a small farm. He sold milk. Who am I missing? There's another one. It'll come to me someday. That's the reason there was so many of them selling milk. That just made economic sense. You could get pretty good money for it.
Do you know what the requirements were to be able to bottle milk?
No, I don't. Back in the, I'll say in the 19-teens, well, probably before that, they discovered that tuberculosis came from cows who had tuberculosis. So they required that herds be tested for tuberculosis. And that was one requirement, that the cows had to be tested for tuberculosis before they could sell milk. At some point, back in Louis Pasteur's time, they discovered that what germs were, and that germs could readily be transmitted through the milk. So, if you look at the bottle caps, in about 1942, Leo Maxwell advertised your choice. You could have raw milk or you could have pasteurized milk. So apparently about that time was when they either required pasteurization or were about to. So it was probably not until mid-40s before pasteurization became a requirement. Now the reason that all these home delivery went out of business more or less came about because of the invention of the paper carton plus injection molding, plastic molding, so that you could put milk into jugs, plastic jugs, or in the paper cartons. This made it possible for stores to buy milk and put it in their coolers, and that eventually, with the mobilization of people after the war, plus the fact that they could buy refrigerators before the war, World War II, practically nobody had a refrigerator. You had an ice box. And milk is one thing that you have to keep cool or it spoils in a hurry. So the market with the paper cartons and plastic jugs, it just opened up the market for stores to sell milk, and eventually that just became the way of life. You bought your groceries and you bought your milk in the store. I was ready to bet that there probably is not another home dairy delivery business in the country, but I was wrong. I was looking on the internet, and out in Colorado there's a Longmont Dairy, and that's not too far from where our daughter lives. She lives in Loveland, Colorado, and Longmont is a couple of towns down towards Denver, and they have quite a growing business of home delivery of milk in bottles. Around here, I think the only dairy that sells milk in bottles is Burn Dairy. I saw they still have a 2-quart glass bottle that they sell the milk in. For some reason, a lot of people think that is the way to buy milk. You don't get the taste of the plastic milk cartons or the wax out of the paper cartons.
You don't have to throw it away.
Right. You can take it back and swap it for another bottle, which is good for the environment. My visual my visual what's it? This is a Crowley bottle or jar, I guess, maybe. Has a wide opening on it. Does anyone know for sure what was sold in this?
Sour cream.
Sour cream? Sounds good. I was going for cottage cheese, but I don't know. Yeah. Good enough for me. 'Cause I have no idea. I rather doubt it. Well, yeah, ask my wife. Did you have cream? Did you? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I know there was a, well, they call it creamery, it was a separating plant there in Straits Corners near
Hmm.
Stanley Ayers places. And that, you used to take your milk there and that's all they did. They
Mhm.
separated, you got the milk back and then
Yeah.
got the cream.
Most of that wound up in butter. I mean, the cream. That's the reason they wanted the cream, was to make butter. And and that was what a way a lot of farmers did it. They just, well, I don't know if there was really a market for whole milk other than by delivery.
Like cheese.
Hmm?
They made quite a lot of
Yeah, true. Yeah. I don't know. Do they use the whole milk for making cheese, or no? Just the cream. Yeah. I remember. I guess it's safe to tell this story. Frank Pratt. I don't know. Some of you old timers remember Frank Pratt. The story is that he sent his cream down to Waverly, and he got it back because it had a dead rat in it. Frank pulled the rat out and sent the cream back to Waverly, so he didn't lose any money there. I forgot one thing here. Where is it? This one. Yeah. This one here, this is a 1908 Sears and Roebuck catalog. Up here you could buy milk jars. Down here you could buy milk bottle caps. That word jars kind of hung on for quite a while, even after they were making what we know today as bottles. They still called them milk jars, but yet they had milk bottle caps, which went in the milk jar. I guess that's about all I got to say. You got any questions other than we've covered already?
Where do you keep your collection?
Where do I keep it? Well, that's a story. After I dug them out of the dump on the hill, I had them in old wash tubs and pails and baskets and crates, and had them stored in the old barn. We used to be on our place. And when I retired from the post office in Ithaca, I decided I was going to get rid of the old barn before it fell down and put up a decent building, which I did. But I had all these milk bottles scattered around in the barn. I had to put them somewhere, so a lot of them wound up in a building that's not readily visible from the house, and I got to worrying about them here probably last summer, I guess, that some new neighborhood kids might get in there and have a bottle smashing good time. So I rescued them and brought them up to the house, and kind of as I sorted through them, I picked out the different ones and washed them up. Well, no, I didn't wash all of them, but I washed the different ones, different dairies, and I think I got probably, I'll say 80 different dairies, all the way from Washington, D.C. to Ithaca and all points east or west.
Tell your theory about how
Oh, yeah. Do I have a favorite bottle? I'm glad you asked. It's this bottle from New York City. And this I also believe is a World War I bottle because it has a slight purple tint to it, but it's got a lot of heavy embossing on it. This particular one is for Sheffield Farms, Slauson Decker Company, New York. On the back is a fancy monogram. Somehow you can make out Slauson, Sheffield Slauson Decker Company. 1 quart, wash and return. JT and AH and the number. But there were probably 8 of those New York City bottles. And
My dad used to deliver milk to Sheffield Farms on Long Island.
yeah, small world. Here's one of the bottles. Maybe he had this bottle in his hand sometime. Anyway, my idea of how those bottles came to be in Candor was back when we had train service, people, possibly students or just people visiting here in Candor, would buy a bottle in New York City, and then they would bring it up here and maybe leave it in the railroad station. The station master would didn't know what to do with it, so he would either set it out, or possibly Ken Doty, who was the son of Floyd and Hattie Doty. He would have been about 12 years old when they started the dairy there. If I was 12 years old, I would probably be collecting milk bottles at that time, so that may explain how these bottles came to be here. And they were out in the old barn that Shaver was cleaning the stuff out of when I happened to be there, and so I saved those. And I guess that's about it. Any more questions? I've got, these are the carriers that the route man or lady had to, they would put 8 bottles in here to take to leave the milk on the doorstep, and maybe they could catch 2 or 3 houses that way without going back to the truck. These old cases held 12 bottles. I figured out what the difference in weight was between these and the newer plastic ones filled with paper cartons, and it's about 35 pounds difference. So as the, yep. Yeah. No, I've never seen any. But I do remember, yeah. Well, kind of like the ice too. They had a card that you would put in the window to had numbers on it, I guess, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and I guess the numbers referred to blocks of ice. I'm not sure how many pounds of ice was in a block, but ice boxes would hold at least 1, maybe 2, maybe more, depending on the size of the ice box. So that way the iceman could leave you however many blocks of ice you wanted. Okay.
Somebody was up there one morning, and there were 2 or 3 cans, milk cans full of milk, with no caps on them, no lids.
Yep. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, that would be like this size here. Yeah, Leo, I guess didn't. He could have had his name on it, but not many did. I think I have a red sicker. This is a half pint, and that would be your cream bottle. So, anybody got any more to add, or not? I guess we'll call it quits. The old bottle caps didn't have any way to get them out of there, and this one here, you can see where they had a sharp instrument in the point of a knife or nut pick or something. That was the only way you could get these things out of the top of the bottle. Eventually, somebody come up with the idea of adding this little tab here. You could stick your fingernail on it and pull it up, and then you could easily shove it back in the bottle and take it out as many times as you wanted. But before the tab, it was one miserable job to to get the cap out in the first place, and even harder to reuse it.
Bob, have you got any of the old 2-quart bottles?
2-quart ones?
I had a plastic thing.
Yeah, that's the Burn Dairy. Yeah, you can still buy those. I saw them up in Tops and the other guy, I believe the other. Yeah, they have the little plastic handle on them. That's the only milk that you can buy in bottles around here that I know of.